Good morning, grade 1. I hope that you all enjoyed your Easter holiday. Today we're gonna start a new lesson. I will start explaining the learning objectives for this lesson. First, we will learn about the clock. Second, we will learn about the parts of the clock. Finally, we will learn how to read the clock to the hour. I want to point out, grade 1, that the letter H in the word hour is silent. When you read it, remember that it doesn't make any sound. Let's start. What is a clock? The clock helps us to tell the time. But what do you mean by the word time? The word time tells us how many minutes a class needs to start or to finish. What are the parts of the clock? The most important part of the clock are the numbers. It has numbers organized from 1 to 12 as the following. When you start drawing a clock, you always start by drawing 4 numbers at first. First, grade 1, you write 12 on the top, 6 on the bottom, 3 on the right, 9 on the left. Then the rest of the numbers, they go between those 4 numbers. And as you notice that all the numbers are organized in a circular way. Let's read the numbers together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now that we learned grade 1, that we find numbers on the clock organized in a circular way, we're going to learn about the second important part of the clock. Do you know what is it, grade 1? Can you guess? Are you ready? Let me show you. The second important part of the clock are the hands of the clock. Let's look at this picture, grade 1. First, as we mentioned earlier, that inside the clock we find numbers. The numbers are organized in a circular way. The second important part of the clock are the hands. As you notice, we see 2 hands. I labeled them hand number 1, hand number 2. Now, grade 1, let's give them names. Before we give them the names, what do you notice about them? How they are different. If you look at the first hand, you notice that it is short. If you look at the second hand, you notice that it is long. So now I can call the first hand the short hand, and the second hand I can call it the long hand. But how about grade 1? We give them names. Now we're going to all agree that the name for the short hand, grade 1, will be the hour hand. And the name for the long hand, it's going to be what, grade 1? The minutes hand. So now that we agreed about the names and the parts, let me tell you a few things about the hands. The short one, the one we call the hour hand, it moves slowly. And the second hand, the long hand, it moves faster. Now, grade 1, that we talked about the clock and the parts of the clock, and we gave names to the hands, how about we give name for this clock? This clock, grade 1, has a special name, and the name of this clock, grade 1, I want you to always remember it. It is called an analog clock. An analog clock, grade 1, it has numbers, those are the numbers, and of course it has the two hands. And remember the two hands, hand number 1 and hand number 2. Hand number 1, what did we call it, grade 1? It is the shorter one. It is called the hour hand. And hand number 2, grade 1, what did we call it, the longer one? The minute hand. Thank you for listening. In the next video, grade 1, I'm going to explain for you how to read the clock.